Huh. Here, oh, right here.
You actually not joining anything. Everybody's doing it. Yeah, but only one. Correct.
She's here in case there's any parents that have a complaint, so she could be here to help them. And so that's what she's doing.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
No, under your mask. That's what it said. The PowerPoint?
That's pulling directly the link from YouTube.
Testing, testing.
So, does everybody know we're not using the light switches? We're not using the light switches tonight.
Yes,
And you
just
wanna turn,
hands.
just raise your hand. And for the voting, we're just doing hands.
Okay.
Do we have to do a roll call vote?
Yeah, we will have to because of Cindy.
It's reps.
Queued up. You can promote against that.
Who's running the team or
To start it or just right up there?
I can't hear him.
You are. It's you tonight.
Too much to that, I think. I say we just launch it.
Here, come down here. I can't hear through the plexiglass. Oh, yeah. And she shouldn't because she didn't do something that she's, I'll get you that. I will. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you the email that I sent her like 10 minutes after she sent me the email.
I should have asked the guys if they could tilt me down a little bit, so, because right now I'm looking at the ceiling.
Oh.
I can see Antoinette a little bit ahead. She's like, "I'm gonna do this." Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Oh, my goodness. That's great. Thank you.
If you fall down.
Yeah, don't anyone jar the desk.
Oh,
I know, just fall down. Do I need to join the Microsoft thing? Am I good?
You're good. I can hear you and you can hear me and life is good.
Okay, great.
And if somehow you get dropped, you can call me on my phone and I'll pick you up from the phone. Okay.
It's a number, the 805 number to call.
No, just call my cell phone.
Okay, I will. Greetings from Florida.
That's a long air flight with a mask on.
It is. One stop and you gotta sit in an airport for an hour and a half with a mask on. It's not fun. But I did it.
Is Meta there yet? Meta isn't at the store and stuff?
Oh, I don't know. I think so.
The room looks great. I like how it's set up. It's pretty amazing. Look at you guys.
All right, you're on.
Good evening. Prior to us coming back to order, I'd like to refer anybody who needs translator services to Miss Paula Valbuena in the back. Your mic's not on.
Thank you. Good evening. Buenas noches, habla Paula Valbuena. Si necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor llame al 1-805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 94174-976 seguido de la tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente, llame al número de teléfono 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 294-174-976 seguido de la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web en mcs4kids.com dirigiéndose a la parte inferior de la pantalla en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Balbueno. And I would like to say welcome to the Modesto City Schools 1453rd Regular Board Meeting of November 9th, 2020. This meeting is now called to order. In closed session, there was no action taken tonight. And so I'd like for us all to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This open session meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district's website, and recordings will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. Tonight, we have returned to holding our meeting in person. Precautions have been taken to allow for social distancing guidelines. Regarding public comment, Modesto City Schools has provided an opportunity for the public to provide a comment. It is outlined in the agenda. The public has been given an opportunity to comment via email, call in, and leave a voicemail or come in person. For members of the public that are interested in connecting in the future, we welcome your comments. We are pleased tonight to welcome a student from Kirshen Elementary School to lead us in the flag salute via video. So while we're getting that set up, our student's name is Caden Adams. Caden is a fourth grader and a hard-working scholar who received Student of the Month during the 2019-2020 school year. He excels in school, but what makes him extra special is his ability to show compassion and to think of others. Caden has overcome many obstacles in his life, but he strives to always do his best. After graduating from college, Caden would like to be a NASCAR race driver or a para-educator. So are we ready with the video? Thank you for leading us in the pledge.
Hi, my name is Caden Adams. I'm a fourth grader at Kirshen Elementary. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Caden. You may be seated. We would like to now go to Superintendent Noguchi for a welcome announcement.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone, for once again coming out to our board meeting. You know, I had a couple remarks to share with you tonight, but, you know, now that I'm sitting in the boardroom and what I'm seeing is plexiglass heaven, I think I would be remiss if I didn't shout out and give a heartfelt thank you to everyone that took their time and energy to make this happen. It's been close to 6 months that we haven't been doing board meetings live. I do know that we did a few, but we really look like we're having some permanent structures put in place. So I do want to thank Roger Orth and his team. Aaron Castro has done a phenomenal job. Russ Selkin and his team with technology. We continue to look for ways to make technology happen and invite board members who are actually on the other side of the United States at this time. Also, my assistant, Monica Lopez Sanchez, and of course, Antoinette Chambers. So I would like to thank all of those folks that made this possible, that is working to keep us safe and others safe. Really, the purpose of having in-person board meetings is to really allow the public. If the public wants to be able to come and give their feedback, their input, their comments, we want to be able to provide that option for them. Again, we do have different ways to make people comfortable with that, but certainly we are opening that up. So again, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. Another thanks to really all the staff and the collaborative work together, all of the team for MTA, CSEA, district office staff, as we work to develop all the details for our MOUs and our LOAs and working to get our schools open. We have spent hundreds of hours deeply focused on health and safety protocols, also instructional delivery, technology, and really looking at ways to keep our kids safe and in stable cohorts. It seems like it's an easy endeavor, but it really isn't, because there's so many details that go into it. So again, thank you to everyone for that. I do want to say I'm very excited that we're going to have some kids back in our buildings on Thursday. So our preschool through second. I'm very excited to see some kids coming back, and I think others are going to be excited as well. But I do want the public to know, and you all to know, that it is going to look very different. Kids are going to be in cohorts. That means they're going to be traveling together. Recess is going to look different. Lunch is going to look different, because we're going to stay together as a cohort. You're going to see a lot of plexiglass, kind of like what you see here. Masks, hand sanitizer, arrows all over the ground, drinking fountains all taped up because we're not using that, and bringing our individual waters, if you will. Students and teachers are also going to participate in synchronous learning, and I want to take a minute to talk about that for just a minute. Synchronous learning is learning where the teacher is teaching the kids at home in distance learning, like we've been doing, but also teaching some kids that are in front of them. I have to say, this is going to be a heavy lift for teachers. If we reflect back to April and May, it was hard for our teachers to learn how to do distance learning. And for those that have been out in the classrooms and those that see it, it really has come a long way between where we were in April and where we are now. Really a lot of effort and time and energy and tears and frustration, a lot of professional development and webinars and such. So what we need to do now is look at this new way of learning. Let's stop for a second. Since last year, we have asked our teachers to now transition to a third way of providing teaching and learning for kids. So I asked for parents to be patient. I asked for teachers to be patient, administrators to be patient, as we learn this new way of learning. And we're going to be in this new way of learning for a while. We have provided a lot of support for our teachers as we move into the synchronous learning. All classrooms will now have a large screen like we see up here with President Marks. We currently are waiting for our third set of TVs to come in, which is set to come in at the end of November. But by the end of November, we'll have all of the TK2, our preschool 2. No, I'm going to take that back. TK2 have the large screens. Preschool does not. We have developed a number of training videos, and you'll see one of those tonight. So what does it look like for synchronous learning? What's the teacher doing? What are the kids doing? What does that look like? We've really identified professional development in 4 levels, because we want to meet teachers wherever they're at. Maybe you're a teacher that has limited technology skills. You're comfortable in distance learning, but you have limited skills. We're going to meet you where you're at and work to support you as you learn how to better support synchronous learning. And then it goes all the way up to a 4th level that literally is working the magic in the classroom. So we do recognize there's multiple levels, and you're good wherever you start. Wherever you are with your skill set as teachers, that's where we're going to meet you and provide you professional development. We have coaches available for one-on-one appointments with any teacher that needs it. You can pick up the phone and call a coach. You can schedule an appointment with a coach, and they're there to be able to support you. Lastly, we have a lot of people working to make school happen, and I want to give a few shout outs, and I'm not going to get everybody, but we really had a tremendous amount of work from our instructional coaches and coordinators. As we say, develop this training for distance learning. Oh, wait, develop this training now for synchronous learning. We are really lucky that we have a high-quality professional development office. Our computer literacy teachers, they're also an integral part of the elementary model. In addition to our tech department, our principals who are continuing to be flexible, and our students and parents who really have shown much resiliency in this last 6 months. So we are embarking on a new phase. I'm confident that we're going to be successful in this, but we just need to be patient and to be willing to learn as we move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Trustee West.
Thank you. I think we all echo the appreciation. I look out on the faces here and I know how hard everyone has worked, and the teachers in the classroom, and our bus drivers and our nutrition department. And I'm so impressed and so thankful at the hours that people have put in and how hard they've worked. I'd like to go ahead and go to the board member reports now. And President Marks, since you're virtual, can we start with you? Do you have anything to report?
I do, so thank you very much, and you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I wanted to let you know that I have visited the Equity Task Force, enjoyed my time on that, and just discussing some of the, it's the Equity and Justice Task Force. So I appreciated the time that I was able to be in that meeting, as well as I believe Mr. Irvin was there, and maybe I think Trustee Lopez as well. And then I also attended the new board member workshop with Vice President West, and I got to meet our new board members, which will be at our next meeting, and we'll be able to introduce them. But Abel Maestros, I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name correctly, and then Omero Mejia. So both of them, it was great to get to know them a little bit before they join us up at the dais. And then also I visited a classroom at one of our elementary sites and went around with Dr. Noguchi and the principal at that site, and it was awesome. Got to see those little kindergartners in one of the classrooms all online. It was so cute, and they did a little thumbs up when she'd ask them a question, so they could all be able to respond, and it was just incredible. Also visited a 6th grade teacher with her class. She was on her break between assignments, and she shared with us how much she's looking forward to having her the students in the classroom with her. So I know that'll be in a couple of weeks, and so we're looking forward to that as well. And then just walking around, seeing the hubs. There was a hub class that was meeting on the school campus, and half of them were outside and half of them were in the classroom. And then all the lines around the school ready for when all of them come back, so they know where they can walk, and the directional lines, and then sanitizing everything. Speaking with the principal about how we're going to do lunches and lunch schedules, and sanitizing in between. Was really, I was just really impressed with everything that was going on at the school site, and so appreciative of how everybody's been working together to make this happen, and being able to get to the point where we can bring the students back, and thankful for just what's gone on in that whole process. So that's my update for tonight. So thank you for being able to make this possible for me to be here where I am, and then also be in the board meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, President Marks. We're glad you could be here tonight as well. Any other board members have anything to share tonight? Yes, Trustee Brown?
So normally I would be attending the construction meeting for the district, and I was only able to check in briefly because I had other conflicts that day, but thoroughly reviewed the agenda, so I knew what the projects were, and I want to thank that team for the great work that they've done through this pandemic process. So much has been able to be accomplished without the students on our campuses, and they've been able to accelerate a lot of the progress that is happening with our bond funds. Great team, and they've done exceptional work. I also want to just take a moment and thank our leadership group. The people that support Dr. Noguchi at the top rarely get mentioned for the effort that they put out. They have proven to be an exceptional team, and I know the number of hours that have gone in way beyond what's expected under normal conditions, and I want to thank them individually and collectively for the combined effort and the leadership that has allowed us to make difficult decisions and be prepared and lead all of our teams in the efforts that are allowing students to eventually return to campus. So thank you to this group, and thank you, as Dr. Noguchi mentioned, to everyone district-wide that has put in the extra time and learning and effort to make sure that we're ready to give kids what they need and to help them as we all struggle together with unknowns and difficulties and challenges that none of us could have ever imagined. And I do want to mention one other thing. It's not a meeting that I have attended, but it's an obligation that I've taken on coming on the 19th of November. Many of you are aware of the Salvation Army's Kettle Kickoff event that happens downtown every year. And it's happening differently this year because of the fact that we can't all be together in one place. And I know Dr. Noguchi and I are representing the education community as bell ringers, and we've been tasked with finding ways to collect the kind of money that is collected when we're all together. And so we won't be running down the halls dressed up funny, trying to stuff dollars into our buckets, but we're putting an invitation out to everyone within the district and within our reach who is interested in contributing to this great event that brings so much needed funds to those with the greatest needs in our community, especially as we approach the holidays. So if you would like to make a contribution, Dr. Noguchi and I are being issued our red buckets, and we would invite you to find a way to make a contribution. I know that there's going to be opportunities both online and in person, and I know there will be a concerted effort within the district to help do what we can to help those that need all of us the most. And thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Brown. Did anyone else have a report tonight? Okay, well then I'll go. I also, along with President Marks, was able to meet our new board members, and so that was just really nice to get to know them on a little bit of a personal level before they join us here. I also did a site visit with Dr. Noguchi. We visited La Loma Junior High School, and I was kind of taken aback at the teaching that was going on in the classrooms. We were able, along with the principal, to kind of pop our heads into many, many different classes and view how each teacher taught online. The technology was amazing. Some of them had, I think, 3 different screens up, and I'm not good at technology, but they were able to be showing math equations, and I don't know what all they were doing, but it was awesome, and the kids were really engaged. And so I was sort of impressed with that. The teachers also, like President Marks mentioned, the teachers were just wanting the kids to come back, missing the kids, and kind of missing that face-to-face that they had, but they were doing an excellent job. It was also interesting to walk around the school and to notice all the safety precautions that are already in place, the signs, how to walk, all of the things that we're doing to take care to make sure that the kids are going to be as safe as possible when they do come back to school. So I thought that was awesome. I was able to watch the documentary Antidote that features our own World Geography and Religions course at Johansen High School, and I don't know if anyone had a chance to view that, but it was really amazing. They talked with the teacher, and they talked with several of the students. One of the students mentioned how before she took the course, and she didn't want to take it, she wanted to get out of that class, But once she took that course, she realized that some of the things she said and some of the thoughts that she had and the beliefs that she had changed throughout the course of sort of opening her mind to different cultures and different religions. And so I thought that was awesome. I was able to participate as a group leader for at La Loma Junior High School for their 7th grade students with a program called Point Break. And it was a Point Break workshop via Zoom. And so I was able to get a little touch of meeting with some 7th grade students, and so that was fun. And then I also was able to view the Stan Emergency Live community forum on Facebook with Dr. Noguchi and the Superintendent of Turlock schools, and they discussed the reopening of schools and answered a lot of questions from the community. So there's a lot of exciting things going on. So if we have no further board member reports, then I would like to go to recognitions, and I believe this is going to be Ms. Noonan.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Because I know this microphone and the mask are not a good combo all the time. But first off, Trustee Brown, I wanted to thank you for your work with the Salvation Army. I worked there for many years. I actually coordinated the national kettle kickoff once back in 2003, and it's a great organization, so thank you for your work with them. So if the information technology staff could go ahead and get the recognitions PowerPoint queued up, that would be wonderful. There we go. Excellent, thank you. So first up tonight, we will celebrate a student with outstanding character through our Character Education Recognition Program. Tonight we are celebrating Hanshaw Middle School 8th grader Axel De Jesus Bernal for the character trait responsibility. And you can go ahead and to the next slide. Perfect. Principal Sue McCann, and I should clarify first, Principal McCann is actually the principal of Shackelford Elementary School, but she nominated Axel and shared the following, that Axel is a former Shackelford Panther who always exuded great character. You can go to the next slide. He is the oldest of many children, and during distance learning, he has been responsible for his siblings while his mom works. And this is a picture of Axel with his mom. When one of his siblings had an issue with their device, Axel walked to Shackelford in over 100-degree heat to get his brother a working device and everything he needed for learning. Axel is very deserving of this award. So let's all congratulate Axel. Thank you for your work. All right, the next slide. I'm super excited about this one. So, and she's actually in the room right behind us. But tonight we are celebrating our MCS hero and recognizing district translator and interpreter with the Curriculum and Instruction Professional Development Department, Paula Valbuena Leon. Nominated by her coworkers, Janeth Gutierrez, Maricela Mota, and Amanda Ramirez, Paula is one of the hardest working team members at Modesto City Schools. Next slide. She goes above and beyond in all of her tasks. Paula is willing to help anyone. No task is too small, and I can attest to that. She works tirelessly to provide our families with the best translations with a high attention to detail. Paula meets every deadline without complaint and with a positive attitude. She is a great addition to our team. And right now I have a super special surprise for Paula. I hope I do this correctly, because if I do, she won't have to translate it. So here we go. Paula, eres tan servicial y te apreciamos mucho. Cada vez que hablamos, siempre estás tan alegre y feliz. Tú nos inspiras a todos con tu actitud edificante hasta cuando estás muy ocupada. Gracias por todo que haces para ayudar a nuestras familias y nuestros estudiantes. Whew. And I will tell you what I just said, because I super wanted to surprise Paula for that, because she loves when I try to speak Spanish. So I said, I think, congratulations, Paula. You are so helpful and we appreciate you. Every time I talk to you, You are always cheerful and happy. You inspire all of us with your uplifting attitude, even when it's super busy. Thank you for all you do to help our families and students. So thank you, Paula. Muchas gracias. And thank you to Monica Sanchez Lopez for helping me with the practicing, and for Amanda Ramirez for doing that translation for me as a surprise. So finally, tonight, and you can go to the next slide as well, the special recognition celebrates all of the staff who participated as our Learning Hub planners, partners, and contributors. It took a team effort to implement the Learning Hubs and help our most at-risk students engage in learning. Next slide. Now, these next several slides are just going to show you a handful of the staff. We had many, many staff who worked on this, so I'll go through the next several slides. I'm not going to be able to read every person's name, but together with site administrators and custodial staff, school nurses, the City of Modesto Parks Recreation and Neighborhoods Department, Stanislaus County Police Activities League, key district office staff, paraprofessionals, and substitute staff. Next slide. MCS was able to hold, or is still holding, 92 hubs at 33 sites, serving roughly 1,100 at-risk students. I think that deserves applause in and of itself, so let's start with that. The next slide. So as I mentioned, this list does not reflect every person that brought the Learning Hubs to life, but we would love to highlight every person who helped make this such a success. But as I said, we're limited on time, but please know if I did not mention your name, that your contribution and hard work does not go unnoticed. Next slide. The Board of Education and Dr. Noguchi appreciate your commitment to all of our students. And next slide. And like I said, that just gives you all of the different staff, and those photos that we featured are all different Learning Hub students. One student in particular with the, I think it was a red sweatshirt, that student had not been able to access for about a month, and then they were able to get their learning once they came into the Learning Hub. So, and ever since then, they've been learning at a great pace. So thank you to everyone who made the Learning Hubs and continue to make the Learning Hubs a success. And that completes tonight's recognitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Noonan. We're moving on to A8, which is approval of the consent agenda. Ms. Chambers, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on an item that is on the consent agenda? No. Thank you. Ms. Noonan, were there any public comments sent in via email or voicemail regarding the consent agenda?
No, not on the consent agenda.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Trustee Newman, and seconded by Trustee Irvin. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand, and then we're going to get to President Marks as well. So aye, and President Marks? Oh, we actually can see you, so you can participate in this. Thank you. So the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to A9, we're looking for approval of the order of discussion action items. So do I hear a motion to approve the order of discussion action items? And that would be Trustee Lopez is moved and seconded by Trustee Newman. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. And no nays, so the motion carries unanimously. We're moving on to A10 now, and this is a period for public comment or presentation. Ms. Chambers, are there any comments from the public? No, thank you. Ms. Noonan, were there any comments from the public via email or voicemail?
No, there were not.
Okay, thank you. So now we would like to go on to B1, and this is our student representative report. Carson, do you have anything to report?
Yes, I just want to make, is the microphone working?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, everyone. The leadership programs in our district have been relatively mellow for the last 3 weeks. Most of the activities have revolved around Halloween, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and Red Ribbon Week. Bayer, Enox, Downey, Davis, and Modesto all pushed out pumpkin carving contests to engage their student bodies. Downey and Gregory led a virtual Red Ribbon Week, and Enox, Davis, and Modesto High launched social media content for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Even in distance learning, our high schools have been actively contributing to our community, with Davis and Modesto High making Halloween cards for Valley Children's Hospital. Davis also painted rocks and hid them around Modesto for their students to find. And lastly, Bayer managed to host a drive-in movie at John Thurman Field. As I briefly mentioned last meeting, the Interhigh Council is working on a district-wide service project. We decided to move forward with the book drive competition, and each school will collect as many books as possible, lightly used or new books. And the week we scheduled for this service project will be December 7th through the 11th. We plan to receive around 1,000 books, assuming all the high schools fully participate. Once the book drive is over, a small group of Interhigh students and I will go to the school sites, collect the books, and donate them to the organization Reach Out and Read. There are 5 Reach Out and Read donation sites in Modesto who collect books and distribute them to local pediatricians, who then give those books to their low-income patients and stress the importance of reading to children. During our Interhigh meeting, the students and I also had the opportunity to discuss online learning and school reopening plans. We discussed 3 topics, and I'd like to share a quick summary of those with you all. In the first topic, we reviewed whether students would prefer to return to campus under hybrid model number 1 or hybrid model number 2, and I was very pleased to see that model 1 is being proposed today. The students overwhelmingly preferred model number 1. They preferred, and just to clarify, model number 1 is where students would return to campus, Group A, on Monday, Tuesday, and Group B would return to campus on Thursday, Friday. They feel that model number 1 is most similar to the schedule we have now and will allow for the most smooth transition back to in-person learning when the time comes. It will also limit confusion among students because it's the easiest to remember. They also feel that the model will allow for better spacing between classes, so they want to have back-to-back classes, with one day being in person and the next day being virtual. One concern that arose with hybrid learning in general was test fairness. If half of the students are testing in class, the other half would have more opportunity to score well, most likely, with the additional resources and availability to unmonitored internet at home. Moving into the next topic, we discussed ways to better support our students who are struggling with distance learning. One way Gregory has addressed this is by pairing students who are struggling in a class with older students in order to help peer tutor and hopefully alleviate some of the stress and help students rebound from their failing grades. Another student mentioned how online learning, although mandatory, feels very optional, and the way the students described this was all the lectures sometimes in class can last for the whole 1 hour and 20 minutes with no interactive learning. And they recognize that all the teachers are doing their best, but they feel it would be extremely helpful in specific classes to have more class discussions and entertaining activities as well. Now on to the last topic. We discussed ways we can support the freshmen in making the transition back to in-person learning when the time comes. The main suggestion was to offer either a virtual or in-person mentorship program where upperclassmen can help guide groups of freshmen to their classes and get to know their school. This can be done through a virtual tour or through small groups on campus if safety guidelines permit. Thank you all for listening to my update, and please let me know if you have any questions for the Interhigh Council or I. This is all I have for today. Thank you.
Wow. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have you on this board and that you are a part of our connection with the students. You do some really valuable work, and so I just want to thank you for networking with them and passing on this information to us that's going to help us know what is the best way to serve our students. So thank you so much. We are going to go on now to our first item on the agenda, B2, which is approval of 712 Safe Schools Reopening Plan. And Mr. Godot, I believe this is up to you.
Actually, I'll take it from Mr. Godot. We're doing like a handoff.
Okay.
But it's seamless. So,
Okay,
yes.
team. Okay, that works. Thank you.
So thank you. Good evening, board trustees and cabinet, as well as members of the public who are here and everyone watching online. My name is Krista Noonan. I'm the Chief Communications Officer. And if you could display the PowerPoint, that would be wonderful for the 7 through 12 reopening. I think you have it up already.
The PowerPoint from the beginning.
the very beginning. There we go. Okay, good. So tonight, next slide. Tonight, there we go. Oops, next slide. There, perfect. So tonight we're going to go through the grades 7 through 12 Safe Schools Reopening Plan. As you may recall, we discussed this on the last board meeting with a general overview, but we've done some additional research and Cabinet has come back with some additional proposals and a recommended action for the reopening timeline. So tonight we're going to be talking about the areas of prevention, monitoring, the proposed learning model, which is just an example at this point, because there are still a lot of things to work out. And then moving on, like I mentioned, to the recommended reopening timeline, and then the approval of the Safe Schools Reopening Plan. Next slide. And this aligns with our district goals of Goal 1 and Goal 3. Really, it aligns to many of the different goals, but obviously these are the two that really stand out and support our students as well as support our staff in safe and welcoming learning environments. So now I'm going to turn it over to Associate Superintendent Mark Herbst, and he's going to go through several slides that talk to our prevention measures. Mr. Herbst.
Thank you very much. Good evening. How's the audio on that? So you guys hear me up there? Perfect. The 7-12 reopening plan focuses on prevention, which includes physical distancing, health, hygiene measures, cleaning and disinfecting, staff training and family education, and additional safety measures for teachers and or staff. So I want to go into a little bit more specific. So next slide, please, Mr. Ghetto. In terms of physical distancing, the 7-12 plan will include 6 feet social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Secondary sites will also address the entrance and the exits and the movements within their respective school sites. Transportation, like in elementary, will continue with the same preventative protocols that we talked about before. This includes limiting the number of students that are on a bus at one time, as well as the insistence on wearing masks. Again, due to the lack of space, we are, just like we're doing at the elementary schools, encouraging our families to the greatest extent possible to be able to provide transportation to their children. That will definitely be a challenge, and it will definitely be a stretch. Additionally, our sites are working on additional non-classroom setting and what that looks like for, say, at lunchtime, any co- and extracurricular activities, and school events. Next slide, please, Mr. Ghetto. In terms of the hygiene measures, there's going to be a heavy reliance on hand washing and hand sanitizing. We also plan to have our students clean their desks daily when entering and exiting the classroom. Like the elementary schools, all staff and students will be required to wear a face mask or shield with a drape. The exception will be for those with medical exceptions or for those students with disabilities who, by nature of their disability, are unable to wear a face covering or mask. Next slide, please. Really proud of this. In terms of staff training and family education, Nurse Chairperson Aurora Lecchiadini and Krista Noonan have done a fabulous job in terms of creating a number of health and safety videos and trainings that will be used with our students and staff. This includes a variety of different topics, but some of the highlights: hand washing guidelines, appropriate mask wearing, and other important information that will be very, very valuable to our students, families, and staff members. Next slide, please, Mr. Ghetto. Like the elementary plan, families will be provided with a student symptom decision tree, which provides guidance to our schools and families on how to screen our students for monitoring any health-related illnesses. These documents give clear direction to our staff and families and is based on the symptoms an individual has and the actions the family or staff member should take. So I think that'll be very, very beneficial to provide guidance when a child may exhibit any type of illness symptoms that could maybe be construed as potential COVID symptoms. And with that, I'd like to turn the next slides over to Associate Superintendent Tim Zierle.
Thank you, Mr. Herbst. Good evening, trustees. Carrying on with the slides about prevention, cleaning and disinfection, as well as additional health and safety measures. All sites will be cleaned thoroughly each day with deep cleaning every Wednesday. Protective barriers to include desk shields being installed on individual desks, ventilation with filter upgrades, HEPA filters, and opening of windows and doors. As mentioned before, disinfecting wipes for desk cleaning at the end or beginning of each class period. Next slide. Also around monitoring health screenings for students and staff. Contactless thermometers will be used when students display symptoms. Parents, students, and staff need to self-conduct COVID-19 symptom screening on a daily basis before coming to school. And do not come to school if you have a temperature above 100.4 degrees, you're experiencing a cough, shortness of breath, or a respiratory illness. I'm going to give it back to Associate Superintendent Mark Herbst for the next slide.
Thank you. This is a change since the last time we met. MCS will be able to provide COVID testing for our school staff. We've secured a large number of COVID tests and are currently working out the details and the schedule for our staff. It's approximately 2,500 saliva tests, with more actually that we've ordered since. At this point, MCS is not offering any COVID testing for our students for a number of reasons, but we do have the COVID testing available for staff and are working on that schedule. And with that, I'd like to, as we change mics, turn it back over to Associate Superintendent of Human Resources, Mike Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Herbst. Next up is what happens when there are COVID cases. If we have an individual who is potentially exposed and they pursue a test and that test is negative, we would require the individual to stay home for 24 hours. The time, along with negative test result, will be sufficient amount of time before returning to the workspace or classroom. If the test is positive, the individual can return to school campus 10 days after the symptoms first appeared and at least 24 hours with no fever or use of medications to reduce fever, and that their symptoms have improved. We have a great team that continues to collaborate very closely with the County Department of Public Health on any changing guidance as it relates to quarantining and contact tracing. That team does regular contact tracing and they liaise with the Department of Health. Those contacts, the definition of that close contact is defined as being within 6 feet or for a period of 15 minutes or more, or direct physical contact with someone. So the contact tracing team, upon being notified of a positive case, will gather information, and once that is collected, determine if individuals need to be quarantined. And throughout the process, they are both collaborating closely again with the Department of Health, as well as ensuring that information related to positive COVID cases are being handled in the highest of confidential nature. In terms of the plans for when we would have to close a school or a class, that'll be the next step, and Ms. Noonan's going to cover that.
Great, thank you, Mr. Henderson. So as this slide demonstrates, we definitely work very closely with public health on when to close or potentially close a class, a school, or when the district would need to reclose, or to close, I'm sorry. Anytime we're looking at closures, it's when we're dealing with a COVID positive case. And with classes, for example, it's public health will consider closing perhaps if one or more students or staff members are confirmed to have COVID positive or COVID-19. Public health, when it comes to a school, public health would consider closing a school if multiple cohorts or classes have confirmed COVID positive cases, or if 5% of all of the students and staff have COVID positive or are COVID positive. The district, they actually look at a higher metric, which is if 25% of the population are COVID positive, then that's when they would consider closing the entire district. Anytime that closures are implemented, it's always a 14-day period. And at that time, the sites go through a complete disinfection and even deeper disinfection than what currently takes place. And then the students switch back to distance learning during the time of the closure. Next slide. We also have a variety of communication protocols in place for when there are either potential exposures, quarantine requirements, or closures that are mandated and advised by public health. So we've provided various scenarios in the reopening plan, and whenever possible, the communication would be provided to families in their home preferred language as well. And now I will turn it back to Associate Superintendent Brad Godot, and he will go over the learning model.
Good evening, Board, and for all of you viewing from home. I'd like to speak around the learning model, and to get to that point, we need to understand that there has been a great deal of communication over the last 6 months, since the end of last year. We spent time surveying our parents, our community, our students, and our labor partners. And what we've recognized is that there's a challenge, and the challenge is providing the model of learning that best fits the needs of and the wants of our parents, our staff, and our students. What we see is there's a need for in-person learning. There are a number of families and staff that want students back, and families that want their students back. We also recognize from the surveys and the online forums and the meetings that there are those that don't feel comfortable in coming back or sending their students back to school. And so we have spent a great deal of time trying to identify the manner by which to do that, to honor choice amongst our families. So what we're doing in the process of is looking at various learning models with our labor partners. And so what you're seeing on the screen now is an example of a possible hybrid schedule. And if you're familiar with the TK6 model, you'll see some similarities with this example with what we're implementing at TK6 starting on Thursday. So here you'll see in the blue columns, Monday and Tuesday, students would be cohorted. 50% of the students would attend or have the option to attend in-person instruction on Monday and Tuesday, while the other half of the students in the orange cohort, and you see that listed there at the top where it says B group working asynchronously through distance learning. As Dr. Noguchi was explaining at the beginning of the board meeting, we are very fortunate to have identified a model in which our teachers are teaching simultaneously, I guess would be a way to explain it, those students that are in the classroom in person, as well as providing that instruction through technology for students that are at home. Some other considerations that we're looking at there is we have to take into consideration transportation schedules and when our TK6 schools are starting and ending in those bus routes. So that's why you don't see any times or the length of the periods. We're still working with our teachers and our classified staff and our managers around what schedule is best going to fit those needs, as well as identifying how the best way to create the cohorts to mitigate the exposure in those cohorts. We'd like to show you an example of a video of some of the work that our CIPD team has been doing. You'll see this as a TK2 example of a resource that we provide to our teachers. But what you're going to notice here is some of the strategies that our teachers are going to employ in working the instructional model. TK6, TK2, 712, it's going to look similar. Obviously, it's going to look a little bit different because this is a TK2 model. But if you can extrapolate out what that would look like at 712, this is a great example of the hard work that our CIPD team has put into, but also the hard work that our teachers are going to have to put into learning where they're at, how to move through instruction in this model. So if we're ready, we can go ahead and start.
If I say home team, you're gonna raise your hand. If I say class team, you guys are gonna raise your hand. Okay, we're just making sure so that way think of your answer. And then when I put my hand down, that's when you all will share. Okay? Does that make sense? We're gonna do some practice. So, clap. Everyone unmute. Perfect. Thinking of your answer. My answer is, my question is, what is my name? What is my name? You're thinking? Ready? Everyone. Mrs. K. Perfect. Exactly. So when I say clap, that means you all unmute. And then when I put my hand down, that's when you all share. Okay? That'll happen sometimes. All right, we are going to get started. So, all right, friends, I'm going to ask you to point to certain parts in your face, okay? If you know where your ears are, can you point to it, please? We're going to use our ears to hear the sound. Point to your eyes. We're going to use your eyes to see the sound. Point to your lips. Where are your lips? Home team, where are your lips? Can you point to it, please? We are going to use our mouths to say the sound. So boys and girls, if we can hear the sound and say the sound and see the sound, then we would be able to read words and write them as well. Look at these three pictures. Cup, cub, and Doug. Home team, get ready. I might call on one of you. Cup, cub, and Doug. Friends, think about what is the vowel sound in all three words. All right, Mrs. K is going to pull a stick. And Sienna, can you unmute yourself, please? What is the vowel sound in all three words? Don't forget to use our sentence starter. They do rhyme, but let's think of the middle, the
if we could go ahead and pause it right there, I think we can continue. We really wanted to show just an example this evening of how instruction can happen in this simultaneous instructional model. I do want to go back just for a moment, recognize that we had an error on the slide on the learning model, so I want to make sure I clear that up. If you look at the top where it says group work on Monday and Tuesdays, the B group, it incorrectly says asynchronous through distance learning. It's actually synchronous through distance learning, meaning students will be learning concurrently with students in person, just as you saw in the video there, where we'll have students in class receiving instruction from teachers, as well as the students at home receiving that same instruction through the live video feed through their computers. So hope that was a great example of how instruction can take place at that level. But as Dr. Noguchi pointed out earlier, really focusing on where teachers are at now. There's a great deal of training, professional development, and support that needs to be laid out for our teachers to get to that level, and I think that's a primary focus right now moving forward. I also want to point out, or just talk to a moment about the cohorting again. There are some significant challenges that are different than with cohorting students throughout the academic schedule in a master schedule than there is at TK6. At TK6, we can accurately identify half the class in the third grade class that's going to attend on Monday and Tuesday for in-person, and the other half would attend on Thursday and Friday. At 712, it's important to note that whichever way we go with cohorting our students, we can, whether that was by a first period class is going to be half the students attend, or whether that's by grade level, say 9th grade alpha, half of the students, 10th grade alpha, half the students. As soon as students go to the next period, then that math doesn't necessarily apply. Now, granted, we would only have half the students on campus at one time, but as they move through the periods of the day, we cannot guarantee where those students, what that class count is going to be. We are working with a number of districts that have already engaged in reopening schools and have identified some strategies to help mitigate those higher numbers that might show up in a class period. But that definitely, I just want full transparency that, we are going to, as Mr. Herbst said earlier around social distancing, we want to maximize the spacing in the physical classrooms that we have and work to mitigate the number of students in each of the periods. But I would not stand here tonight to say that we're going to get 6 feet, guaranteeing 6 feet social distancing in every period in every class. That is going to be a challenge that I don't think that we can meet. It's just, it's a function of the master scheduling and mathematics. So we'll do the best we can to get it where it needs to be with a focus on the health and safety protocols, mask wearing, and sanitation practices in class and between periods. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Newman for a moment.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Godot. So as we've mentioned before, and I think a lot of the newscasts throughout the state consistently cover the tiers that we are in. The tiers were actually established by the state, and it's part of the blueprint for a safer economy. So they were rolled out a couple of months ago. Stanislaus County had previously been in the purple tier and just moved to the red tier, which that's actually the lower you go on this chart, the better. So we moved to the red tier a couple of weeks ago. So as of Friday, when we prepared this PowerPoint, we were in the red tier. However, the numbers are shifting, and that's where I think the biggest thing that we can encourage everyone to do is wear your mask, practice social distancing, wash your hands, do what you can to prevent COVID, because we are starting to see an uptick in our numbers. The county public health officer had gone on the record saying that Stanislaus County, for those of you who kind of geek out on data like I do, we need to stay in about 40 cases per day. However, if you've noticed for the past week or so, we've been anywhere between 60, sometimes 70, sometimes 80, and I noticed a 100 jump just the other day. So hitting those numbers, it is most likely that Stanislaus County will move back into the more restrictive purple tier, and then we would need to come back out of that. So in order to move within the tiers, you need to have 14 days consecutive of meeting that data point. So for example, in order for us to have moved into red, we had 14 days consecutive of meeting the red's criteria. Then we moved into red, but then higher level schools or schools could reopen without a waiver after another 14 days had passed. So there are several time constraints that are assigned to this, but as of right now, we are in the substantial tier, and the state releases the new tier assignments every Tuesday at noon, in case you want to check the state's website. But that's where we are right now. So I will transfer back to Mr. Godot.
Thank you. So this evening, we are presenting a timeline that starts with 7-8 schools, or proposing that our junior highs would potentially open the Monday following 2 consecutive weeks in the red tier or better, but no earlier than Tuesday, January 19th, which is the second week of the second semester. And the reason why we say Tuesday of that week is because Monday is a holiday. So again, we are recommending that reopening our junior high and high schools is a function of the data and the tiered system. And we want to make sure that we are tracking or projecting a decrease in COVID cases, and that we need to stay in the red tier for 14 days consecutive. And then proposing that 9-12, our high schools would start 2 weeks after junior highs reopen if we continue to stay in the red. So what are our next steps? Well, we're going to continue working with MTA and CSEA and establishing those agreed upon practices, health and safety protocols, and how best to support our staff in reopening schools and welcoming students back into our classrooms at 7-12. We're going to continue procurement of all the necessary supplies and materials that we need to reopen 7-12. We'll continue our staff development to support our students, our parents, and our staff. And it's not just about supporting staff. We have to continue to teach and educate our students and our parents as to what those expectations are when they come to school, and before they actually leave the house, what needs to be happening around the daily COVID self-assessments. We will continue to provide guidance to our secondary school sites, more specifically their site planning as it relates to the specific aspects of how students come onto the campus, how they exit, what does lunch look like, what does a passing period look like. And then we will communicate with our junior high and high school families about the reopening timeline. So this evening, staff is recommending that the board approve to open 7-8 schools after 2 consecutive weeks in the red tier or better, but no earlier than January 19th. Again, that would put us in 4 weeks of red data or red tier data. And open 9-12 schools, our high schools, 2 weeks after our junior high schools, assuming we are still in the red tier. So with that, we are available for questions.
Thank you for that report. I'm going to open up. Trustee Brown, you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you for this report. I'm curious about you mentioned, Mr. Godot, the procurement of supplies. Can you give us an idea of how that looks? I know every school district in the nation is trying to get these same supplies, and lots of businesses are competing with schools because to open any setting, the safety protocols have to be in place. So how are we doing, and does our timeline allow us to get all of the supplies that we need?
I'm going to defer that question to Mr. Zierli. I think he would be the best to answer on the supply chain and ordering processes. As soon as we get him a microphone. A sanitized microphone.
So I see CARES dollars for more
Yes,
microphones.
welcome to the board meeting of the COVID environment.
That's a great question, Trustee Brown, and it's one we've been dealing with for several months. We have we've been working on this, preparing for first the TK6 TK2 opening, then TK6. So we are well stocked with our supplies and our supply chains to reopen. But we are also continuously ordering ahead as scheduled. So not only do we have what we have now, but we are ordering, so we constantly are receiving shipments throughout the next several months. But we're in decent shape, depending on the product. Just like when you go to the store and like right now we're trying to find disinfectant wipes. I mean, those are you can hardly find them in the store, and in the quantity we would need to do period cleaning every day. That's probably our biggest struggle at the moment. But we have found a vendor who can get them to us in time for whenever we bring back our 7th through 12th grade population.
So something I want to add, Mr. Zerley, could you talk about the timeline for the filters and also the TVs? Because I know that we have made a commitment to our teachers to be able to have large screens in their classroom. And so could you talk a little bit about where we are with the TVs and also the filters?
Yeah, TVs we didn't believe would be, and we were told it wasn't a supply chain issue because that wasn't something that was in high demand in education throughout the state of California. But at the quantity we had ordered, we had put in an order for a large quantity of large screen TVs, and we had asked for 150 to be delivered every Friday because we don't have the space to store a large number of large screen TVs, and it also gave the vendor kind of some time to get them to us. We got our first shipment a week ago, almost 2 weeks ago, our first 100, but we didn't get our last shipment this last Friday, and I believe Dr. Noguchi said it in her opening remarks, in her message, that we expect to get those at the end of November. So in that case, it's not necessarily an issue with the TVs, but we're finding delays in just having available trucking companies to deliver the orders for us. The same with the filters. We ordered our filters back in August, our MERV 13 filters for our heating and air conditioning systems. We just got that delivery last week. But come to find out, the fabric that goes into making the filter, that was out across the country. Nobody could find the fabric to make those filters. So, and again, we got half of our order because their trucking partners didn't have the trucks available to deliver it. So it's a combination of things, but with advanced planning and getting our orders now perpetually into the system, we're finding it easier to meet those demands.
Thank you. Yes, Carson?
Okay, so at the last board meeting, we talked about the tentative opening date of January 11th for 9 through 12, and now it seems it's going to be like about 3 weeks minimum pushed back from there. And I'm a little bit, I'm worried about many of the students in high school on campus with MCS's goal of preparing college and career readiness. I know the figure from my high school alone of the amount of failing grades from quarter 1 2019 to quarter 1 2020 has doubled. And in terms of equity, it doesn't necessarily have to mean equality. So what would the possibility be of having some of the struggling students who are not earning passing grades return to campus before some of the students who are able to cope with distance learning better?
We do have, and it was kind of highlighted, and I don't know if you caught it, but we do have a number of hubs that exist at the secondary sites, including your Grigori. Well, I was going to say Modesto. Actually, I thought you'd mentioned Grigori. I'll tell you that each one of the high school sites, and I don't want to say it's by week, but the high school sites continue to push to open up more and more hubs. And that hub basically is designed to have some a level of adult supervision and assistance for the children that are struggling. And so while it may not be ideal, and I appreciate you bringing up the point, it's definitely an intervention for some of our more at-risk kids.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't certain if the learning cohorts were strictly for physically at-risk students in general. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Trustee Newman.
All right. Well, thank you, cabinet members and Dr. Noguchi, for all your work on this. This is a lot of what if this happened, what if this happened. So continuing on that vein, so I think this might be a question for Ms. Noonan, who talked about how do we close a class. So, okay, we have our high school open, and there's an outbreak in Algebra 1. Then what? So, I mean, the kids have, we assume that's going to be mostly freshman kids in that class. So then what?
So that would definitely be, that's I think where one of the challenges come into play with high schools, because there are so many, there's the inability to have the more stable cohorts like there is at elementary schools. So what we would do is we would rely on the contact tracing process. We would definitely consult with public health, and then they would advise us on any type of quarantines that would be necessary, any type of closures. That's how I understand it. If anyone else, Mr. Herbst, do you want
No,
to
I was going to say she hit the nail on the head. I think the challenge at the secondary level is exactly that, Trustee Newman. On the flip end of it, the reliance on health and safety protocols, the reliance on distancing, the reliance on face masking, and the preventative things that we can do on hygiene, I think will be incredibly helpful on minimizing the I guess the spread, so to speak, or the potential spread of having to quarantine large numbers of classes and or a school. Hopefully that would mitigate that.
Okay.
If you don't mind, Trustee Newman, just because it kind of is on the same vein, thinking way outside the box, has it been discussed having students stay in the classroom in cohorts and having teachers rove into the different classrooms? That might prohibit some of the intermixing, the kids changing classes. I don't know if it's possible, but it would alleviate some
I'd love
problem.
to take that one. We've considered numerous different scenarios. The challenge with that one is it's not clean with teachers just rotating class. The classes that meet first period, those students, some may go to an advanced class where others may be going to a different class, and they don't always stay at the same level for all classes. So that model it's one of the things that we vetted through, honestly, but it doesn't meet the needs of getting students the in-person instruction that we want to get them, that we need to get them.
Go ahead, Trustee Newman.
Okay, so back to the situation. If we have an outbreak in a class, then we'll be working with public health and the contact tracing, right? And it would be some of our staff people working with the families of the students.
Yeah, that's correct. We have a contact tracing team, and then we would work in conjunction with county public health, but yes.
So the whole thing would be started from the student the parent calls the school and says, okay, Juan has COVID and this is who he is. And then our staff would then say, okay, Juan's got, in first period, he's got algebra and second period, he's got PE. And then we'd go through, and would it be our staff people that would be tracing?
Primarily, yes, and then
Okay.
working in conjunction and sharing that information of their results back with public health, but yes.
How big is our contact tracing team?
It's expanding. Total of how many members, Mr. Henderson? Are we at 5 or 5 for? Yeah, 5, and then excuse me? The additional, yeah, so we're at 5 plus the additional mobile, which was another 2, Mike? 2, so a total of 7.
Okay. And so it all begins with the parent has to trust us and to say something. So we have our policies that are in place that the student we would encourage that kind of communication. So the student might be worried about making up work and that kind of thing. We're communicating very clearly that's an excused absence. That's even when they're waiting for test results, it's excused absence. We're communicating all of this very clearly. So we're building this trust so that there's an open line of communication. And this is going to be really important. because this is where the system kind of breaks down. Is we have to rely on a trust with each other. Okay, and then the schedule, Mr. Godot. Okay, I think the schedule's great. The only issue is it appears by the schedule that 0 period and 8th period get 4 days of instruction.
That was based on the possibility that, so the other periods are, will be more likely a block or a longer period.
Oh,
So we're
okay.
trying to determine, would 0 period meet for a shorter length of time and the 4 days over the course of the week? Or would it be a block period similar to the other periods and only meet on Monday and Thursday? Or it's, so that's one of those things that we're still working out the details to figure out exactly
Okay,
what
because
that
I was
model
just
would
trying
look
to
like.
figure out how we work that out. I mean, it'd be great if you had advanced calculus 0 period, because then you'd have all those 4 days and then you'd have all that instruction. I think you guys have advanced chemistry for 0 period, don't you, or is it 8th? Yeah. So that actually might work out. All right. So then, let's see. All right. Have we discussed the idea of the timing of the opening if we waited I know there's other districts that are waiting until they're in the orange tier to open up 9 through 12. Have we discussed the idea of waiting a certain number of time if we're in the orange? And the pros and cons of that?
No.
Okay. And because red still is substantial. I mean, what we're talking about with the older students is more of a higher rate of transmission. Particularly with our 9-12. With the 7-8, I'm okay with opening in red, but with the 9-12, I want to think about the idea of waiting till we're in orange.
That could certainly be something that the board recommends.
So did the cabinet discuss that? There was some pros and cons discussed?
We did not discuss that, given the county and talking with other superintendents in the county. There's really been a push and a lot of pressure by both parents and students and community members to open in the red. As it stands, we've been in the red for 4 months, and as we all know, there was a push on why didn't you open? The question there, or really the consideration there, was one, part of the supply chain, but also we knew we were going to be going into cold and flu season. So by the time that we start going back into red and we see that it is going down, this doesn't just happen. It's predicted through county health that the number of weeks even before it even happens, it's this slow crawl up and it's a slow crawl down. So if we're going down and it is in the springtime, then we're hoping, along with perhaps a vaccine that's going to be out there, again a lot of ifs, that we'll be in a better spot. However, if the board wants to make a recommendation that we wait till we're in the orange, certainly we can take that direction.
Well, I mean, certainly I'm going to be gone after one more meeting, so it's not going to be my decision. I just, wondering whether we had talked about that. Then there was some talk, there's been some talk at a state level with regard to mandating flu shots, the seasonal flu shots. Is there anything that is part of that? I haven't seen anything materialize, but we do not have, that is not mandatory at this point.
That is not mandatory.
Okay.
And they're not sure that they're going to have the COVID vaccine mandatory at this point. So that is, we just need to let legislature figure out what they're going to do with the vaccination.
I know that some of our CSUs and UCs were discussing it and putting it into policy prior to the school year beginning. But then they decided to go remote. So that it's been kind of on agenda. All right. And then in terms of communicating with our parents, and this is for when we're, opening our lower grades, there's colder days. So I know with junior high students having had junior high and high school kids, they often don't wear their coats to school because they're inside all day. So it's just one more thing to lug around. So it's something that the kids may need to be reminded of, and so we need to be thinking about that. The reality that your junior high and high school students usually don't bring a coat is because there's not enough room in a locker. So that we're just going to need to make that kind of communication with them. And I think, and then just to reiterate, there was a point that Mr. Godot made that Mr. Herbst also reiterated that in our, if we open 7 through 12, we, because of the master scheduling, we will not have 6 feet of distance in any of our classroom we anticipate, or all of our classrooms.
I wouldn't say at all. I would just say some may
Yeah,
meet
there
that
would be- we
may meet
can't-
that standard, but that would not be the majority of the classrooms. It just depends on the physical layout of the class as well as how many show up in that period for that cohort on those days. There are some mitigating strategies that we've learned through working and talking to other districts. For example, if there are let's just say three sections of algebra of ninth grade students in third period, and by the way the cohorts fall on the rosters, one class is at 15, another class is at 20, another class is at 28. Once we get the cohorting settled that week, then we would balance the classes in that third period of those 3 classes, and so we would move some out of the one class that had 28 into the class of 15 and balance them that way, so we would lower the number as much as we could, but again, there's no guarantee that it would be 6 foot social distancing in every classroom.
Right. I think it's just good we make sure that that's clear. We're going to try and do our best on that, but
Yep.
I wanted to reiterate that.
Full transparency there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for all your patience on those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Lopez?
Yeah, this question I believe might be for Mr. Herbst. Have there been conversations with county around? I know that especially right now with coming on back to school, you know, when we have the when someone, you know, it needs to get tested and it comes out positive, it's days and hours matter, right? We need to know how fast if they're positive, so that we can do a proper contact tracing. Has there been talks with the county officials around prioritizing our COVID testing? I'm not saying only Modesto City Schools, but any essential work, be it hospitals, be it school districts, to get priority of making sure that our tests go in first and we get that back sooner.
A great question. I don't know if there has been the talk of a true priority, but I would tell you there have been some things that have changed over the last couple, we'll say months. I do think that the results are coming in much, much quicker than they ever have. And Nurse Chairperson Aurora isn't in here. I think that she would agree with that comment. I do also recognize, even on the documents that we submitted, for the TK6 waiver, it depends on fluid, ongoing, quick communication between us and County Public Health. So I don't mind having that conversation, and in terms of, but not a true priority of a district per se, but I do think that they recognize the fact that in order for this to keep going, that there has to be ongoing, quick communication between the schools and public health, no doubt.
Definitely, because I mean, we talk about a lot of businesses are coming back, but none as much in close contact as we could possibly imagine in the school system. So if not, you know, I really urge our county officials to take that in consideration in the next coming months, as most of our districts are coming back on, that we make school testing prioritizing of getting results back, so that we can do our proper due diligence and our contact tracing. Oh, and my second question was for Mr. Serling. Has there been an increase of custodial hiring, and by how much, or are we expecting that? Since I know that the workload might pick up for our current staff.
No, the only increase in hiring we have is to increase our custodial substitute pool. So we have available personnel when somebody is not there for their shift. But we don't intend to increase our custodial staff, our normal custodial staff, for cleaning protocols.
That makes sense. All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? President Marks? Oh, I could read her lips. No.
Questions at this time, but thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
Great information.
I believe my questions have all been addressed as well, so if there's no other questions from the board, Ms. Chambers, do we have any comments from the public? No, thank you. Ms. Noonan, were there any comments from the public via email or voicemail?
Yes, I have several. So I will go ahead and read those into the record and let me know if you can't hear me while I'm speaking.
Thank you.
What's that? No, I have one of these. Am I loud enough?
No, I just want to make sure that folks at home are able to hear you, so
Oh,
that's
great.
good. Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
Okay. So the first comment we have is from Mr. Doug Burton. Doug is the president of the Modesto Teachers Association, and his comment is as follows. Good evening, Board President Marks and trustees. Doug Burton, president of Modesto Teachers Association. At your October 19th meeting, I encouraged you to be cautious and consider waiting until after winter break to reopen TK through 6th classes. Flu season is upon us, and cases of COVID-19 in Stanislaus County are on the rise, not decline. Instead, you pushed back the staff recommendation for reopening schools and inadvertently created a logistical nightmare for students, families, and teachers. Whether you realize it or not, Cohort A will have their first day of in-person learning on the first day of Parent Conferences Week. I understand that since it is not on the agenda for tonight, that it is too late to change the return date for TK through 2nd grade students and the teachers who educate them. MTA is appreciative of the safety measures that have and are being put in place for the protection of our members and their students. But it is important to remember that there is not a safe way to return to live teaching, just some protocols that make it safer. We encourage you to be thoughtful and cautious in the decisions that you make as you continue to bring back more grade levels, as we are likely to slide back into the state's purple tier tomorrow. Caution should be your guide, as people's health and potentially their lives are at stake. Thank you for your time. Doug Burton, President, Modesto Teachers Association. The next comment comes from Lori Paul, and Lori is a parent. Her comment is as follows. Dear Board Trustees, I am a parent of 2 MCS students, one in elementary and one who started high school this year. As we near the planned reopening date for elementary schools, I would like to ask you to please first consider the following. As you know, COVID cases around the country, state, and most importantly, our area are on the rise at an alarming rate. Just today, the county released yesterday's numbers, which showed nearly 100 new cases. While it may be true that younger children generally fare better than others who have COVID, our teachers and school staff don't have the same assurance. I am concerned for them. Here are my simple questions. If at the time the board chose the November 12th reopening date, the local COVID data would have been then what it is now, would you have made that decision to reopen? If cases had been on a steady rise at that time, would you have approved the waiver application? If you would have known then what you know now about the COVID outlook for the fall and winter months, would you still have been willing to send our teachers, staff, and students back to in-person school? If the answer is no, or even if you're unsure, then please be willing to take action to delay reopening. We as a district are finding ways to make distance learning work. Please let us continue on this course until conclusive and lasting data supports reopening. Thank you, Lori Paul. The next comment is, I hope I pronounced this name correctly, Yahir Salazar, or it could be Yahir Salazar. Yahir is a teacher. The comment is as follows. Hello, I teach at Gregory High School, the first MCS school that had to lamentably close because of an outbreak of coronavirus. I doubt Gregory is the only school who will have to close because of an outbreak. I find it incredibly disturbing that the district is considering opening for in-person instruction because of parent pressure. We teachers want our students in our classroom as soon as possible, but if adults cannot get their act together and wear face coverings to protect others, How are we teachers going to enforce that policy to students? Parents, we want your students back into our classrooms. We love and adore each and every one of them, and we thank you for giving us the opportunity to be their teachers. Please do not sacrifice our health and well-being and that of our own families. Thank you. The next comment is from Gina Ellenberg, who is also a teacher. The comment is, I would like to pose the question to our board. Have any of you been to a school and talked to teachers about distance learning? Have any of you observed any one teacher on the computer to our youngest students? If you have, I wonder how you would vote to reopen. If you haven't observed any of these things, I would ask that you do before you make a decision. Be informed and see for yourself what a mess it is and how we are only teaching 30% of our classes with work being turned in. It is putting our youngest students further behind. We need to be in person 5 days a week, all day, now. Thank you, MCS teacher Gina Ellenberg. The next comment comes from parents Caitlin and Jake Mayorino. I think I'm saying it correctly. I write this letter as a concerned parent of 1st and 4th grade students attending a Modesto City elementary school. It is my understanding that the district will be rolling out a phased plan to get children back in the classroom. My husband and I are strong proponents of making this happen with a full-time Monday through Friday traditional schedule as soon as possible. We were very fortunate to be included in a pod of 8 children in multiple grade levels at the start of the school year. At that time, we thought this would be a temporary solution for us parents who work full-time and do not have grandparents available to facilitate distance learning. We are in a position that we can afford to essentially pay private school tuition for my kids to be monitored while on distance learning. That is a luxury I know many people do not have, and I would consider my kids to be in one of the better learning environments relative to their peers. Having said that, I can still see the sharp decline in the education they are receiving, their social skills, their enthusiasm about learning, and their overall mental well-being. The routine of school, the social interaction, the quality education they receive in the classroom, and the feeling of safety they are missing far outweighs my concerns of the children contracting COVID-19. Of course, there needs to be safety precautions put in place to protect staff, students, and teachers, but it seems there should be a way to make this happen. And the comment goes on, but we had to cut it because of the word limit that we have. The next comment comes from Mrs. Lucrecia Hurtado Adame, who is a 6th grade teacher and RISE lead teacher. And the comment is as follows. I understand that the Board of Education wants to provide good customer service to the families of children enrolled at Modesto City schools. The board is facing pressure from the public to reopen schools because other districts around us are doing the same. The parents that want their children to return to school are under the impression that the school day will be as it used to be. These parents are under the impression that their child will not be online. I also understand that parents are faced with difficult challenges of managing their own jobs/careers and want their children to return to school because they are unsatisfied with distance learning, and children in school means no issues with childcare. It feels as if the public is under the impression that teachers are in some part responsible for the recovery of the economy and babysitting children. We are being asked to risk our health and safety because the public wants life, in quotes, to get back to normal. Modesto City Schools is responsible for doing what is right for children. Returning children to school at the start of the flu season in the middle of a pandemic is not right for children. It's also not the right thing to do for teachers and school staff. We need more clarity and transparency. When will parents and teachers be given the same information? Respectfully, Mrs. Lucrecia Hurtado Adame from Orville Wright Elementary School. The next comment comes from parent Sandy Lubeck, and Sandy's comment is, Dear board members, Alexis is doing the MVA program at Gregory High, and we like it. It is just crazy to open any school. They have already had many positive staff members. So have most other schools that have minimal people on campus. Every year when school opens, the kids get sick in the first month or so and bring it home to us. This virus is deadly, and someone thinks it is good to open schools for younger kids. The younger age groups are the worst. They are not going to wash, wear a mask, and distance. I don't think it is worth risking people's lives to go to school for a few hours a week. I'm sure most teachers don't want to be in school risking their and their family's health. Adults I see in stores won't wear a mask or it is below their nose. How are schools going to make sure these kids keep them on or not touch them every minute because they slip or move? Then they touch the mask, touch their face, and everything they are near, just spreading germs. Until COVID is truly under control, we will homeschool through MVA or on our own. Thank you, Sandy Lubeck. The next comment comes from Sandy Backus, a teacher and a parent. The comment is, "Good morning. As a local teacher and mother of two, I support all schools reopening as soon as possible. There has been ample time to put safety measures in place, and our kids are desperate to return to the classroom. My 4th grader is set to return next month, but my 9th grader has not been assigned a return date. I implore you to do so. We are permitted to return to school without approved waivers, and it is time. Thank you, Sandy Backus." The next comment is from Ms. Wendy Brown, a teacher at Enox of Spanish, English, MVA, and an academic decathlon coach. And her comment is as follows. "I am a concerned high school teacher. I know getting back to in-person instruction is what is best, but science, and best is in quotes, but science is dictating now is not the time. I believe the small cohorts of at-risk students are a great bridge to learning for those not thriving through distance learning. I reside in Oakdale, and this week, their K-6 returned with modifications. On day 4 of in-person learning, there are already 2 classes on a 2-week quarantine due to positive cases. Luckily, they have zones, and only 2 classes are being required to stay home. This happened in the 1st grade. I think the idea of closing down on-campus instruction after Thanksgiving is a very smart choice, and I appreciate you taking the safety of staff and students seriously. Last week, and in parentheses, 2nd week of instruction, 2 students tested positive. One found out their results on Thursday, and the 2 older siblings had been on campus Wednesday. I don't know why siblings were allowed on campus. It seems like the protocol wasn't in place, and now more students are at risk. I would hope this isn't the case for MCS. It has now been determined 7 through 12 in Oakdale won't be returning until January. We are a much larger district. We need to get it right the first time we roll out our plan. Last meeting I listened, and it was suggested to have grades 7 through 8 return before break because they are like, in quotes, mini high schools. It was stated that it would be disruptive for high school students to return weeks before finals. Junior high students have finals too. I think the best move would be to space out each grade or section, such as TK through 2nd, 3rd through 6th, 7, 8, and 9, 12, over a 2-week period to ensure the safety of students. I do not think grades 7 through 8 should come back until January 11th, and that the high schools should proceed 2 weeks later if grades 7 through 8 are successful in returning without being quarantined. And again, due to the limit of the comment, we had to eliminate some of Wendy Brown's comment. The next comment comes from Lucinda Chizar, a parent. And the comment is, MCS has failed to provide a functional online learning venue. My IB student has faced relentless connectivity issues. He was locked out the entire first 2 weeks of school for one reason or another and has continued to be unable to access his classes and curriculum, as well as ability to take exams 50% of the time. This has led to extreme anxiety as well as depression, and he has given up trying to engage with online learning because of the chronic IT failures are injurious to his mental health. When I request that he work independently using paper, pencil, and textbooks, I'm told he will have to exit IB and that his grades will suffer. His grades are already suffering, and he worked hard to get into that program. I'm directed to apply for a spot in MVA, Modesto Virtual Academy, for January instead, which is not guaranteed to be available and is also relying on the same faulty technology MCS is providing. Similarly, my 5th grade GATE student is so depressed and anxious by the chronic failure of the technology to deliver learning that she is now also refusing to engage. I put her on Khan Academy for 5th grade math this week, and in 3 days, she was able to master all of the math that she has been struggling to understand since August 10th. While I understand the need to protect public health, it is also important to acknowledge that MCS fixes the delivery system of remote learning. They are failing to provide education, causing mental health problems, and making unreasonable demands of students, teachers, and parents. The next comment is from a parent named Victoria Gaffney, and the comment is, please explain how teachers will instruct to in-person students and those at home. Is it from their desk on their Chromebook, a video camera? Assuming it is from their desk on their devices, how do you expect small children in TK through 2nd grades to learn in this manner? Why did you choose this method to return? The surrounding districts seem to have figured out alternatives, but why did MCS go this route? I do not know one family who will be choosing to send their kids back for this. You've let us and our kids down. The next comment is from parent Linda Cosgrove, and Linda's comment is, hello, I am writing to advocate for the underserved young people in the special needs arena of our school system. I am compelled to do this as I see the daily suffering of my young person, Lucas, age 15 at Downey High. Lucas is in the autism program. In conversation with his instructor, he has stated he is ready and willing to be on campus with his students. These young people are in desperate need of the social interaction and the one-on-one instruction they receive from their instructors and aides. As a nonverbal autistic child, Lucas is frustrated by the inability to understand clearly the instruction given over the internet, and the poor quality of sound causes sensitivity to his hearing and at times overstimulates him. He very much needs his aides, so during the week, I, his grandmother, pays an aide to be with him if I cannot myself, because I work full-time. We must stay by him during his instruction. As I stated, he cannot concentrate fully on what is happening. He types responses, but sometimes it's what the last person typed. These classes are half the size of the normal classroom and do not transition like others. It would be to their best interest to attend full-time instead of rotation of only 2 days a week. Please consider their specific needs as you move forward in these difficult times. I appreciate your consideration. Sincerely, Linda Cosgrove. The next comment is from teacher Geraldine Cavalli. The comment is, cases are surging. Beginning in-person instruction is short-sighted. The lack of logistical planning is apparent every time teachers ask for clarification on the plan. We are constantly told we're still working on that, or I'll find out more information for you, but given no real answers. When our lives are the ones at stake, testing solutions on the job is unacceptable. Logic and science say in-person should be delayed. We will see multiple deaths and hundreds with long-term suffering. You are playing with our lives, and the tone of these meetings has made it clear that less concern is given for us than for the optics of playing political chess. Consider Heidi Hussey, Demi Bannister, Ashley DeMoranis, Tom Slade, Nakoma James, and Teresa Hohen. These teachers died from in-person instruction. We chose this career to positively influence our community, not to be unnecessary martyrs in a political game. Do not sacrifice us. distance learning works, and we're beginning to hit our stride. If you choose not to delay, you should begin all future meetings by reading these names aloud to remind yourselves that decisions have real consequences. Who will, who will pay for the long-term hardship of this short-sighted decision? It's unfair to thrust these costs on us because of your political game. You should budget for the hospital bills, funeral expenses, and mental health treatment that will occur because of your short-sighted decision. For this district is exposing us to unnecessary danger without proper planning or protection. Please delay in-person instruction. The next comment is from teacher Jill Taylor. Jill's comment is, I am very concerned about the ability to teach while wearing a mask that forces me to rebreathe repeatedly my own exhaled carbon dioxide. I also believe that the expense required to equip our schools and classrooms with costly antivirus fixtures and measures which but marginally protect will be wasted if we should have to return to distance learning after a brief period of classroom learning. It will be more traumatizing to students and to teachers as well if, after having put forth much effort to meet all the requirements to resume classroom learning, we are forced to resume distance learning. We should stay the current course of distance learning for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year. Thank you, Jill Taylor. The next comment is from a student. I have her first name Adriana and her last name starts with a V. Hi, I'm a student in one of Modesto City Schools high schools, and my biggest concern would be social distancing at lunch and in halls. How will the school keep teenagers distant from one another if they tend not to follow, especially during lunch with their friends and groups and at halls? Would 100% distance learning be guaranteed as well? If so, can we decide to go back whenever we feel safe ourselves as the school is back on? Thank you. The next comment, this is actually the last comment, is from teacher and parent Epi Chung. And Epi's comment is as follows. It appears that the board and the district have used research and regard for public health in the reopening plan for grades 7 through 12. At the October 19th board meeting, you proposed to open after their first semester ends. You proposed to open after their stressful finals week. You considered the students' challenges in transitioning back to in-person learning. You are giving a full week after winter break before you reopen. Is this to get distance from possible COVID exposures after the holidays? As a parent of secondary school students, I appreciate all these careful considerations. As an elementary school teacher, I wonder why our community was not given the same considerations. It is evident that no research was done regarding our calendar. You have TK through second grade students returning 2 days before Parent-Teacher Conference Week, one of the busiest weeks of the year for elementary. It is a full week of minimum days. Is this the best time to bring students back? You have grades 3 through 6 returning right after the Thanksgiving weekend. If data projections are accurate, members of our community will gather at Thanksgiving, and you are sending those members back into a classroom that may or may not have appropriate air filters or safety shields. Are many of these items still on back order? There was such a contrast between discussions of reopening elementary and secondary. Was it blatant disregard for elementary, or was it lack of information about elementary that prompted the trustees to approve the reopening plan for TK through 6? And that concludes all of the public comments I have.
Thank you. We're coming back to the board to see if there are any further comments from board members. President Marks, I'm looking at you.
I'm believing that the staff's recommendation, I'm supporting that at this point, and so that's my comment. And thank you for reading all the comments from the public. We appreciate their and our teachers, their input on
what they see as some important issues and considerations for reopening our junior high and high schools. Thank you.
Thank you, President Marks. I just didn't want to forget you because you're behind me and I couldn't see you. Are there any other? Yes, Trustee Newman.
All right. I appreciate all the public comments, and it seemed like a lot of them focused on the elementary opening, which probably those were, since we're just talking about the 7 through 12, it just kind of got blended together. But on that, the secondary opening is different because the science behind, and we've been given this information, and maybe we haven't talked about it openly enough in public, but we've been given a lot of information. I've been following it myself closely with regard to some of the science concerning the rate of transmission among our younger students is much lower, based on some of the studies that are international and other items from public health. So that's why there's different considerations, because we recognize with our older students there's inherent problems, and we discussed some of those tonight. That the issue of cohorts and contact tracing, and the idea with the master schedule, we can't keep that 6 feet distance. The elementary is very different. We can keep some of those cohorts. We can do some of this contact tracing. It is not without any risk. I mean, we are living in a pandemic. I have to go into the office. I had to go into the courtroom today, where the ventilation system, I mean, that building, the Lord only knows. But, and there's prisoners sitting a few feet from where I had to be today. And so I understand the concerns, but I think that, we aren't living in a world where we can get rid of all of the risks. That doesn't exist anymore. That said, I think that the plan that we have set forth, I think I'm in favor of what we're proposing for 7-8. I think that our we can learn a lot from what we could do there with our 7-8 students. I think there's a lot of need for them to get back, get the instruction they need, the social needs that they have. 9 through 12 is a little different. For our seniors, they're going to be looking at distance learning in college. I have a very real thing happening with my own son who's at Berkeley, and the horror stories of what distance learning in college is unbelievable. And I've talked to students that are left our district and gone off to college, and it's just very difficult. And so our 9 through 12 students, even after they leave us, may be in the midst of distance learning. And so I, this may be their new reality. I hope not, but it might be. So I would like to propose that we peg the opening of 9 through 12, and we get the community support on this, is that you want our high schools to open, then we've got to get our levels down to the orange level. So we get in the orange, maybe it's a week in the orange, and then we would press for opening, or 2 weeks if that's more appropriate. I know that other districts are talking about doing this in other areas, and so that would be my proposal. That's what I suggested during comment time. I know that's not what staff has worked out, and I didn't hear anybody else comment on that, so I don't even know if I'm out in left field on this, but I think that we need to be, the community needs to have a low rate of infection, just because of the reality of how many students we have on our high school campuses. They're significantly larger than our junior high campuses. We're talking over 2,000 students. Our largest junior high is about 800, right? A little bit under 750, 760. So we're talking about significantly more students and people on the campuses in our high schools. So I would propose that we follow this the recommendation for our 7-8, that we open after 2 consecutive weeks in the red tier or better, but no earlier than January 19th, and then that we'd open our 9-12 schools 2 weeks after we're in the orange. And so that it wouldn't be pegged to when we open our 7-8, it would be pegged to the community, to the community improving the rate of infection. So that would be my 2 cents.
Do we have further discussion on that? Yes, Trustee Irvin.
Man, it is clear that we're literally between a rock and a hard place when it comes to this situation. And, I would probably be inclined to agree with my colleague, Trustee Newman, but having conversations with many students out there who are struggling to be able to grasp on this virtual educational endeavor, so to speak, and not getting it because and students who are coming from AP classes and other high academic classes as well, leads me to believe that we need to focus on what is the best scenario for them, and talk to my daughter who's a student and her friends who attend Davis and Downey and other schools, and they want back in school. They want back in school. They, at some point we're going to have to trust them to say, hey, we need you as students to adhere to the guidelines on a daily basis that we have set in place. Staff has come up with a very methodical, strategic safety plan, implemented within the district. And, we have more control over that as a district than we do what they do outside when they leave campus. And we're going to have to educate them on how the practice of, social distancing, wearing their mask, when they leave campus, when they're at home, helping to educate their parents and things like that, that we need to continue this practice not only at school but also in the community. Because my fear is the losing some of our brightest students to to closing off their engagement in the classroom, and withstanding, yes, we have teachers, but I think that we can come up with a plan. I think the plan we have set forth can work if we can, all agree on the strategy, what's the best strategy to implement the plan and how we phase the plan in. But all of the students and many parents that I've spoken with, we want our kids back in school. We want our kids to be successful, the majority versus the minority of students. But the majority that I'm talking to say they want to be back on campus. They want to be in the classroom, and they want to be able to engage with their teachers in the classroom. And so, with that being said, I am, inclined to, support the district's plan and to reopening our schools in the phases that we have forth, even though we're still in red tier, but we have the waiver in place, and that's how I'm leaning.
It's very difficult, I think, for us as we listen to the comments and we hear so many different sides and so many different comments of people supporting going back and people not wanting that. And it's rough. It's really hard. I do have to say that, got to adjust, sorry. I do have to say that with Trustee Irvin, I hear what you're saying about our brightest students, losing them. My fear is that we're going to lose our students that are struggling. We have those kids, and I worry about kids dropping out of school because there are a lot of students who just can't engage in the distance learning. And so I worry, how many students are we going to lose through this process? We hear our own student representative talk about how he talks to the students that he associates with on campus. So I hear your concerns, I understand, but I think I'm leaning also towards Trustee Irvin's comments of kind of keeping with the plan that we had discussed. I've seen, I think it was a high school in New Jersey, I watched a news documentary, and they were open for a long time. I know not every school does this, but the kids cared. The kids wore their masks. The kids kept their distance. The kids were careful because they said, this is our high school experience. We don't want to lose this. And so I think it is possible. It can be done. I think we're more worried about what happens when the kids aren't in school, what's going on in the homes, and how are we keeping our kids safe. And so maybe we need to promote more communication on how to keep your students safe at home as well as at school.
And when I say brightest students, I mean all of our students. When I use that term, I feel all of our students are bright students. And that includes all of our students who are not becoming engaged. I identified some of those AP students. When I mean bright students, our brightest students, I mean all of our students are bright.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that's our charge, to make sure that they're all successful at the best possible strategy to improve their well-being and their achievement within our district.
Thank you. Yes, Trustee Brown.
I'd like to turn to our student representative and ask him to weigh in on this timing issue. And then I have a comment afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly reiterate both points that were made. I think, obviously, student safety is going to be the most important when considering reopening schools. But also, I've gone back whenever I first went through this PowerPoint, and I keep looking at the line, equitable access to enable all students to attain college and career readiness. And I don't think this is entirely possible with the distance learning model. It is the best that is going right now, and I think teachers and staff are doing a phenomenal job accommodating students. But the longer that we stay in distance learning, the more students are going to fall behind. The ones who are already struggling to attain passing grades, those numbers keep slipping, and as we can see at our school sites, that the number of students who are failing their classes and possibly have to engage in extended summer school, and other classes to make up these requirements to even graduate, these are just going to keep adding on if we stay in distance learning. And going on to our high-performing students, with distance learning, we kind of lose the satisfaction of working super hard for a class, a test that we want to pass and do really well on and score highly on. With distance learning, the teachers enable you because there's no way to control who has access to what internet resource. They enable open note tests, and although this is the best we can do with the distance learning, with in-person learning, we start to get back with students striving for their academic success, having the satisfaction of studying hard for a test, sitting down in class and performing to the best of their abilities. And I think this goes for the whole broad range of students who are struggling, so they can sit next to their peers in class and have their teachers in front of them and be able to perform well and enable them to attain their goals with an education at Modesto City Schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Brown, you had another comment or question?
Yes, I've been listening carefully to all the comments, to the comments from my fellow board members, and I really appreciate hearing the perspective of the students. I go back to the presentation with information that Ms. Noonan shared with us about the increasing numbers within our own community. I fear that we will have a difficult time meeting this timeline with the holidays coming, with the colder weather, with the flu season, with the rising numbers now, even as we're not even in those conditions yet. So I have a hard time pushing it to another tier level when it's going to be difficult for us to reach that red level and be able to open. But I want to put our trust in students. and really engage them in the responsibility part of this equation, and make sure that we allow them to be the driving force that allows our schools to remain open. So I'm leaning towards the recommendation with the understanding that we cannot open unless our entire community works to stay within the red zone and improve towards orange and towards yellow, and to conquer this beast that we call the pandemic. But we've got to empower our students to be a big part of the improvement in our district. So I'm leaning towards supporting this recommendation.
Thank you. Trustee Lopez.
Well, I want to say that I'm leaning also towards this recommendation, but I have to agree with Trustee Brown. We want to make sure that we come back. That seeing this and seeing our cases, I don't see that this could be a reality, and it's up to us. And I'm not saying this board, I'm not saying the staff members, I'm saying to the community at large. It's up to us as individuals of this community to get our kids back to school. And we do that by taking our precautions day in and day out. We're the only ones, the parents, our community members, our students. The decisions that we make here today are only a fraction of the decisions that allow us to get back to school. We need to put our differences aside and make sure that we're putting our masks on, that we're taking our precautions for the ability to come back. And I hope that we come back on a yellow, or like I said last time, something less than that. And if we come back on a red, then we'll make sure that we do it in the safe way. But we need everyone's help. I've been saying since the beginning, we just have to take our time and put a little effort towards our community and towards the safety of us all and the help, because we talk about the mental effect of this pandemic. I just can't imagine the mental effect of losing loved ones, and that's in general, right? So in order to do that, in order to do our job, to make sure that you come back healthy, we need to get to a point where we're all healthy outside of the schools.
Thank you. I'm just going to give President Marks an opportunity, since if there's anything else you'd like to add. If not, we'll move on.
Okay, I'll just briefly let you know that I'm still in support of the original recommendation from the staff. And I just wanted to say that I talked to a teacher this last week, and she was really looking forward to having her students come back, because many of her students that are seniors are failing. She happens to teach some students that struggle in many ways. And she said that the distance learning has not been helpful for them. And even her A student has dropped out of many of the online learning classes because she just can't handle it. And some of them have other things going on in the background. They can't pay attention. It's just been really hard. So I know getting back into a school environment where it's quiet and they can pay attention, be able to do the work that they're doing will be really helpful. And she was really hopeful for her students to be able to come back and be able to be in that classroom where she can help them individually and in the way that, even though it's not as close as she was before, they're in the class paying attention together. So that just, it also was very similar to one of the letters that was sent in this week about a parent said that their children were struggling too. So I'm going to support this, and I don't know if you're ready for a motion, but if you are, I would love to make the motion.
I am ready for a motion. So President Marks has moved that we will accept this, and just to be clear, to clarify what we are voting on is to approve the recommendation to open 7-8 schools after 2 consecutive weeks in the red tier or better, but no earlier than January 19th. So this is after 4 weeks of red data. and to open the 9-12 schools 2 weeks after the 7-8 schools are open, assuming we are still in the red tier or better. So President Marks has moved. Do we have a second? A second by our student Representative Cardoza. And so all in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. And opposed? So, so moved. So that is our recommendation for this. So I know it's getting late. I think we have one more item, and I don't anticipate it's going to take too long, Ms. Hinkle. So if we're all okay to just move through, we'll just go ahead and go to our next item. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Marks, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, Executive Cabinet, and guests. I'm Danielle Hinkle, Senior Director, Student Support Services.
Ms. Hinkle, can you maybe go a little bit closer to the microphone so we can...
Sure.
Thank you. Better. Thank you.
And also, can we get the presentation, the board policy also showing on the screen?
I don't have that. Okay. This evening, I'm bringing forward the first reading of Board Policy 6173, Education for Homeless Children. In addition, I'm requesting to delete the Board Policy 6170, which is also called Education for Homeless Children, and this is the policy that was written in 2005. I'd like to note that the language from the 2005 policy was merged into the proposed new policy, BP 6173, with the appropriate editing notation so the board and the community can see the recommended changes to the language. The essence of the Education for Homeless Children policy contains the following: the removal of barriers to enrollment. That would include things like students not having the appropriate enrollment paperwork when they move to a new school, or perhaps having fees or fines at their prior school. The policy also includes designating a homeless youth liaison for homeless children, and that's currently the Senior Director for Student Support Services. And I'd also like to add that I feel very fortunate that we also have a homeless youth coordinator who assists with areas such as coordinating transportation, referrals for housing or shelter, food banks, clothing, medical, and a host of other community resources. The policy includes assurance that homeless youth are provided the same services comparable to services that other students receive, assurance that homeless youth are not segregated into a separate program based on their homeless status, and reporting of outcomes for homeless youth, which is provided as part of the annual statewide data report provided by Director of Assessment and Evaluation, Mr. Ryan Reynolds. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have prior to seeking your approval of the deletion of Board Policy 6170 and approval of the first reading of Board Policy 6173, Education for Homeless Children.
Thank you, Ms. Hinkle. Do we have any questions from the board? Yes, Trustee Brown.
I'm wondering if there's a way that we can personalize this policy by knowing how many homeless students we have in the district.
As of today, I actually looked that up. I thought somebody might want to know that. As of today, we have 316 students in TK through 12 noted as homeless, and that is through our office verification process, and that's up about 30 from last year.
So I appreciate that information, and especially as we look at bringing our students back to the campuses. I know a lot of those students are in our on-campus cohorts already, but those are some of our highest risk students. And I know people in the community who have survived having been in homelessness while they were in elementary and high school, who have thrived and have succeeded, and I strongly urge the district to take whatever steps are necessary to make sure that these at-risk students get the attention that they need. I appreciate the language that's in this, and I recognize that most of the language here is recommended by CSBA,
Yes, it is.
and seems like the direction that we need to move.
Thank you. Do we have other questions from board members? Seeing none. Ms. Chambers, are there any comments from the public? None. Ms. Noonan, any comments from the public via email or voicemail?
No, there were not.
None. All right, thank you. Do we have any other comments from the board at all? So I'm waiting for a motion. Do I hear a motion? Trustee Newman has approved and seconded by Trustee Lopez. All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Opposed? None. So hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Do we have items to be placed on a future agenda? Any items we need placed on future agenda? Hearing none, I'd like to thank everyone for participation in tonight's meeting, and do I hear a motion to adjourn? Nobody wants to go? Trustee Newman? Seconded by President Marks. This meeting is adjourned.